Which of these stories will you be talking about tomorrow? President-elect Barack Obama, as the news reverberates still through the nation, through the world, through the annals of man.
It is now 11 o'clock on the East Coast, and Keith, we can report history.
Barack Obama is projected to be the next president of the United States of America.
While we breathe, we hope. And where we are met with cynicism and doubt, and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can.
And a new timeless question. Now what? Is Congressman Emanuel chief of staff or not? The first cabinet rumors, Robert Gates, Chuck Hagel, John Corzine, Lawrence Summers? With Howard Fineman on staffing out a sea change, Richard Wolff on the conversion from candidate to president, Chris Cillizza on the Senate and House, a recount for him, Al Franken. Neither gone nor forgotten.
If I cost John McCain even one vote, I am sorry about that.
Never mind costing him votes. The shopping spree may have cost him much more than 150 grand.
They know that certainly there is absolutely no diva in me.
If not diva, how about this? A McCain aide calls the Palins, quote, Wasilla hillbillies looting Neiman Marcus from coast to coast, and vows the truth will come out.
Don't know what the heck's going to happen in 2012.
So let us luxuriate in what will be happening through at least 2012.
If he loses Ohio, he goes from 286, which the Republicans carried in 2004, down to 266, and that puts him below the 270 threshold to win the White House.
Guess what, Carl? I've just received word that the state of Ohio has gone for Barack Obama.
Oh, snap. All that and more now on Countdown.
So,
Good evening. This is Wednesday, November 5th, 76 days until the inauguration of President-elect Barack Obama. With the only remaining question about the election of the 44th president, was it just a mandate or was it both a mandate and a landslide? Our fifth story in the Countdown. Either way, who knew? Turns out the country was in the tank for Obama. You can exhale now. This man is officially president-elect. Last night, 250,000 people in Chicago's Grant Park, 78 million more watching on television, watching Barack Obama win the White House. About the other numbers, Bill Clinton got 370 electoral votes, then 379. George Bush, 271, and then 286. With only one state now left to call, North Carolina, President-elect Obama leading Senator McCain 349 electoral college votes to 173. No chance of a Reagan-style landslide, but in this era of the assumed 45-45 split, what may be a neo-landslide. The Democrat winning the popular vote by a 6-point margin of 52-46, with nearly 64 million votes for Mr. Obama and more than 56 million for Senator McCain. Mr. Obama beginning his first day as president-elect by having breakfast at home with his daughters, then a trip to the gym before heading downtown to thank campaign staff. Top of agenda, picking a new White House staff. Advisors saying that Obama wants Chicago Congressman Rahm Emanuel, a veteran of the Clinton White House, to be his chief of staff. From the Rose Garden this morning, if the 43rd president was feeling hurt by the Democrats' landslide victory, he succeeded in keeping that to himself.
No matter how they cast their ballots, all Americans can be proud of the history that was made yesterday. Across the country, citizens voted in large numbers. They showed a watching world the vitality of America's democracy and the strides we have made toward a more perfect union. It chose a president whose journey represents a triumph of the American story. It will be a stirring sight to watch President Obama, his wife Michelle, and their beautiful girls step through the doors of the White House.
And the same went for the current Secretary of State.
One of the great things about representing this country is that it continues to surprise. It continues to renew itself. It continues to beat all odds and expectations. You just know that Americans are not going to be satisfied until they really do form that perfect union. And while the perfect union may never be in sight, we just keep working at it and trying. And I just want to close on a personal note. As an African American, I'm especially proud.
Time now to call in our own Richard Wolff, senior White House correspondent for Newsweek magazine, joining us from Chicago, where he spent election night with the Obama campaign. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Before any talk of dirty politics or the pick of Sarah Palin, should the takeaway from this election be on a political level that the president-elect won not because of what anybody else did or because of unexpected economic developments, but because he ran a superior, even perhaps superlative campaign?
Yeah, you know, you hear the conventional wisdom coming from Republicans that were it not for the economic crisis, everything would have been okay, or at least the race would have been closer. And it reminds me of the excuses you heard after the 2006 midterms when people said, especially one Karl Rove, when they said, you know, if it weren't for those sex scandals and corruption stories, we'd have been just fine. That's just not the case here, because I think, you know, Hillary Clinton was right. This is an extended job interview, these presidential campaigns. And what's more important than the crisis or the stories that crop up in a campaign is how the candidates react to it. Here you had a candidate who reacted to it with a very even keel and a presidential-style temperament. And his campaign kept its focus on their strategic goals, didn't bounce around from message to message. Those are very important lessons. If Republicans want to correct their mistakes, they need to understand why they lost first.
How does, on the Democratic side of things, this celebration last? How long until the reality, it's not exactly buyer's remorse, the analogy has to be something different, but this reality kicks in that this is not the ideal time in history to be a president?
Well, inside Obama's inner circle, they are certainly aware of the problems. In fact, more than that, they're daunted by them to some degree, humbled by them, and certainly the president-elect knows that this is an incredibly a full agenda and an ambitious project that he has in these difficult times. But there's another aspect to this, which is that president-elects like to have big issues to deal with. Their chance at reaching for greatness comes from the greatness of the challenges. So in their own minds, they know that there are people out there in the economy, also with the national security threats, that desperately need their help. So this is a challenge that in some ways they relish as much as well, if not dread, they at least know the scale of the challenge.
As to the current president, he seemed to be expressing a genuine admiration, even a pride in the Obama victory, in what we heard from him at the Rose Garden this morning. It would be really hard to fake that. Was it genuine? And if it was genuine, why was he not upset by what has to be contained in that decision last night, this electorate's utter repudiation of his entire 8 years in office?
Yeah, I know they don't look at it inside the West Wing as saying, well, you know, it's a great stride for this country that we messed it up enough so that an African-American president could be elected. You know, I was speaking to a number of White House officials about this, and it does seem very genuine. You've got to understand a couple of things. Set aside everything that's happened over the last 8 years for a minute, but here's a president who did appoint one of the most, if not the most diverse cabinets in American history, 2 African-American Secretary of States. He likes to think of himself as being very open-minded, particularly on issues of race, and I think there is a genuine admiration for what Obama has been able to achieve here. Of course, there was a certain amount of a distance, shall we say, a coldness even, between the McCain camp and President Bush, notably being disinvited to the Republican convention. But when it comes to how he's preparing to transition and even welcome the Obamas, I think this is very serious and very genuine.
Richard Wolff of Newsweek and MSNBC in Chicago for us tonight. As always, Richard, great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
And after the longest and most expensive campaign in American history, the question, one we will ask nightly until at least the inauguration, is one posed by a very different and a very fictional candidate.
Marvin, what do we do now?
Wait a minute, what?
Obama's first "what do we do now?" obvious. The transition from the president to the president-elect, from the campaign to the president-elect. The answer is Obama will move, quote, quickly but not hastily, according to an unnamed source close to the transition. The Obama-Biden transition team is already in place. Former Clinton Chief of Staff John Podesta will be its co-chair. As we mentioned, Congressman Emanuel has been offered Chief of Staff. And yet another veteran from the Clinton administration, the former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, a top contender to fill that critical position once again, although controversy at Harvard might follow him this time. New Jersey Governor John Corzine also reportedly on the short list for that job. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates is widely rumored may remain in his post for the near future anyway. And in a further nod to bipartisanship, the retiring Republican Senator Chuck Hagel of Nebraska may be asked to become Gates' eventual replacement or to accept another key position on Obama's national security team. Caroline Kennedy from Obama's VP selection team in consideration for ambassador to the UN, according to Politico.com. Her cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a possible choice to head the Environmental Protection Agency. And more marquee name prospects include former Secretary of State Colin Powell for Secretary of Education. Let's bring in Newsweek magazine's senior Washington correspondent and political columnist, our own Howard Feynman. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
All right, first transition in wartime in 40 years, plus a recession already in progress. Might this transition, like this campaign itself, recast how this whole thing is done by necessity?
Yes, and it has already. Obama's changing everything as he moves. His victory speech last night in Grant Park, which was so memorable on so many levels, was also the first speech of his administration 3 months before it begins. He said, we're at the base of the mountain, not at the mountaintop, and exuded a sort of sense of somber, let's roll up our sleeves determination that you're seeing reflected in the fact that he got this transition system running 2 or 3 months ago. Another example of this guy's ability to plan and look ahead, look over the horizon. They've been working for months on this, Keith, just as they worked for months on the campaign itself before anybody noticed.
The names that we mentioned here, they're just some of many possibilities that have surfaced for the new administration. It's all over the place. But what will be, is there going to be an overarching theme in the appointments? We discussed this last night. Competency, bipartisanship, diversity, newness, where are they going?
Well, it's going to be all of those, but I think if you had to pick one, it would be excellence. Barack Obama is a guy who appreciates excellence and focus. He's a guy who appreciates results, as we've reported repeatedly. Doesn't like drama queens, doesn't like egomaniacs, doesn't like leakers, which eliminates about 3/4 of the people in Washington for sure. And that's what he's going to focus on. It'll be naturally diverse and naturally bipartisan. He's not going to pick people to fit slots because they're Republican, because they're an African American, because they're Hispanic. He believes that the country's changed enough and developed enough and is diverse enough, as his own election has now shown, that he can pick the best people all across the spectrum and will reflect the whole country. But it's going to be excellence first and experience. He's a young guy, but he's a guy who doesn't mind having senior people around, at least to talk to, if not to necessarily have in cabinet positions. As
they game plan the first 100 days, the first 6 months, even with budget constraints, does he want to come out with centerpieces of legislation, the grand arc of the first few months, or is it problem solving? Is there any indication on that yet?
Oh no, he's not an in-basket guy. He's not a guy who waits for stuff to come in and be thrown on his desk. He's proactive, and he's thinking deeply and seriously and in a big way about a big economic rescue package or a recovery plan of some kind of his own. He's been encouraged already to think that way by Ben Bernanke of the Fed and by other people who are experts on the economy, including Larry Summers, who you showed there before. It's going to be big, and it's going to be bold, and it's going to be detailed. And I can tell you they're already working on the details of it now. We won't know for a while, but they're already game planning it.
Is this the quote that's over his desk right now, the Leon Panetta quote? You better damn well do the tough stuff up front, make the decisions that involve pain and sacrifice?
Well, I think he's not naive. I think he knows that that's going to be true all the way along. The country's essentially broke. There's a credit crisis in the world. He's been handed a big set of problems. But the guy I saw last night seemed very soberly determined to roll up his sleeves and tackle it. Yes, I think with that big economic rescue package, he's going to deal with taxes right up front, Keith, because he knows taxes. If he's going to raise taxes on anybody, he's going to have to do it right off the bat when his numbers are high and when he's got momentum in the wind at his back. So he'll do all of that big and bold right at the beginning.
Not a coincidence that the steepness of the slope was mentioned last night within an hour of Mr. McCain's concession. Right. Howard Feynman of MSNBC and Newsweek. Great thanks tonight. And of course, Howard, great thanks for all of your help during this election season.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks very much.
Which is hardly over. As many as 4 Senate seats still up for grabs tonight. One already into a state-mandated automatic recount, even though the incumbent Republican is actually saying his Democratic challenger should fight to stop the recount. And there's another Republican, a John McCain staffer, calling Sarah and Todd Palin Wasilla hillbillies looting Neiman Marcus from coast to coast. And you thought we'd run out of great stuff to talk about.
We gave the C-Class high-strength steel reinforcements, improved aerodynamics top and bottom, and 100 years of racing heritage only we can provide. You may not see all that went into making the C-Class, but you will feel it. See your authorized Mercedes-Benz dealer for a special lease offer through Mercedes-Benz Financial.
Picture trying to build a 50 billion bits per second network for 45,000 employees in an office building the size of a massive stadium that connects to the entire country, and building it all in under 2 months. And then you can picture the network Quest built for the Republican National Convention. Now picture what we can do for you, no matter the size of your business. Get Quest. Get nimble.
The recount in Minnesota, the convicted felon re-elected in Alaska, the possible re-vote in Georgia, and chaos in Oregon.